The overseer of Magnolia Grove always picked the most fragile man to fight. Yet no one anticipated the events that would unfold in the heart of T. Mississippi Territory Overseer Silas Blackwood maintained a savage tradition. Whenever an enslaved person was deemed no longer productive, he summoned them for a final confrontation in the center of the plantation under the blazing sun. Before a gathered crowd, the principle was straightforward: win and secure your liberty, lose and perish in combat. For the overseer, this was he thought to eliminate those he considered burdens and to instill profound terror in the rest. He would select anyone, an elderly man, a frail youth, even a kneeling boy. His cruelty became a grotesque form of entertainment for the estate. 22 individuals had confronted him. 22 individuals had been killed. However, on a heavy, moisture-laden morning, an anomaly occurred. The man Black, with someone had been behaving oddly for weeks. His movements sluggish, his coughing more persistent, stumbling as he worked the fields. The general assumption was that he was nearing his and everyone believed this, save for one person. When the overseer issued his challenge, an absolute silence fell over the plantation. The seemingly feeble man stepped forward. There was no terror in his gaze, no uncertainty in his stride. In that instant, a few of the elder enslaved people discerned a familiar pattern, a tactic older than the estate itself. The subsequent events would irrevocably alter their world, though the overseer remained oblivious to what was coming. Before we proceed with this remarkable tale of retribution, please subscribe to the channel and comment with T. City you are watching from. Let us continue. The Blackwood estate spanned thousands of acres of rich delta soil, land that yielded abundant cotton, a source of wealth for white men and an in misery for black people. The plantation operated at maximum capacity. Hundreds of enslaved individuals labored from sunrise to sunset, 6 days a week, granted only Sunday afternoons for rest. They reside in rows of rudimentary cabins situated behind the main house, sleeping on wooden pallets, surviving on meager rations of cornmeal and salted pork, and clothed in the coarsest fabric. Their existence was defined by perpetual exhaustion and dread. Silas Blackwood owned it all, having inherited the estate from his father, Reginald Blackwood. Silas was young, driven, and intent on surpassing his father's legacy. Reginald had been a conventionally cruel plantation owner, employing standard methods of control, whippings for punishment, the sale of family members, and overwork until Odie's collapse. Silas, however, desired absolute supremacy. He wanted his enslaved workers to fear him in ways they had never feared his father. He studied techniques for breaking spear, read texts on taming wild horses, and applied these principles to human beings. He refined methods of psychological torment, unpredictable brutality, and public spectacles designed to traumatize. His most potent spectacle was the fights. The ritual commenced. An enslaved man named Joseph had grown old. His hands were twisted with arthritis, his back permanently stooped from a lifetime of labor. He could no longer maintain the pace, slowing down his work crew. Silas observed his struggles before summoning him to the center of the workyard. He announced to the assembled crowd that Joseph would fight him. Victory meant freedom. Defeat meant Joseph would have no need for it. Joseph was terrified, aware he stood no chance against the vigorous young overseer. Yet, refusal meant being whipped to death. Fighting offered a sliver of hope, so he fought, raising his gnarled fist in a futile defense. Silas toyed with him, allowing weak, errant punch before retaliating. A single, powerful blow shattered Joseph's jaw. The old man fell and did not rise. Silas kicked him repeatedly in the ribs, head, and back until all movement and breath ceased, leaving Joseph dead in the dirt as hundreds watched. Silas stood over the corpse, breathing heavily, spattered with blood, and smiled as he surveyed the horrified faces. His message was clear: work until you break or die fighting. Those were the only choices. neighboring plantation owners learned of Silas's methods. Some, like Charles Morrison from the adjacent land, criticized him for destroying valuable property, arguing that selling infirm slaves was more economical. Silas disagreed. He believed the terror inspired by one public death compelled 100 others to work harder, and the resulting surge in productivity outweighed the loss. He was correct. In the aftermath of Joseph's killing, output on the Blackwood estate increased significantly. People laughed, or through sickness and injury, pushing past their limits, terrified of the alternative, the circle, the overseer's fists, a public death. The system proved effective, and so, as continued it, over several years, 22 men died. In that circle, not all were elderly or infirm. Some were merely unfortunate, crippled by accident, weakened by fever, or marked by a persistent cough. Any sign of diminished productivity made them a target. Silas would watch and wait, then call them out, force them to fight, and orchestrate their deaths. These men had names, histories, and grieving families. Joseph was first, then Benjamin, who never healed properly from a broken leg, then Isaiah with a lung disease, then Samuel with a back injury, then Josiah, who was going blind. One by one, the deaths mounted, and the fear deepened. Yet, fear also fosters other emotions, resentment, hatred, and in some, a resolute determination to resist. Open rebellion was impossible. The legal framework was designed to prevent it. Gatherings of enslaved people without white supervision were illegal, as was teaching them to read, and their testimony was inadmissible in court. The system made organized resistance unfeasible, so the enslaved found settler ways, quiet, patient methods of defiance that would only become apparent at the crucial moment. Nathaniel was one such patient man, born on a Carolina plantation. He never knew his father, sold at 15 after his master's death. He was marched in chains to Mississippi and purchased by Reginald Blackwood. Nathaniel had lived on the Blackwood estate for many years, witnessing the transition from Reginald's traditional cruelty to Silas's refined sadism. He saw all 22 deaths in the circle throughout. Nathaniel was cautious, playing the part of the compliant worker, diligent, obedient, and inconspicuous. He survived by watching and learning, constantly analyzing Silas's methods. Silas was undeniably strong, a large, muscular man with natural athleticism, but he was untrained. He relied on brute force and rage, depending on his opponents being too weak and terrified to mount a real defense against the old and sick. This sufficed. But what if he faced someone who could actually fight back? Someone strong, prepared, and knowledgeable. This question consumed Nathaniel, but he possessed no formal combat training. His knowledge was limited to desperate scuffles among the enslaved, insufficient to defeat a heavier, stronger man. So Nathaniel undertook a quiet, revolutionary act. He sought knowledge from the eldest on the plantation, those who remembered Africa, who had survived the Middle Passage, who carried memories of a life before chains. Their W, as a woman named Hattie, she had been on the estate for decades, brought from West Africa as a young woman. Now aged, she was kept alive for her skills as a midwife and healer, knowledgeable in herbs and remedies. Hattie also possessed knowledge the whites were unaware of combat techniques from her homeland. Her people from the region now known as Nigeria had warrior traditions, methods are fighting larger opponents, knowledge of pressure, points and vulnerable areas on the body, ways to use an enemy's strength against them. This knowledge was useless under slavery, even dangerous if discovered, but Hattie remembered. When Nathaniel approached her one evening, asking if she knew how to fight, she understood his intent immediately. You intend to face the overs. It was not a question. They were alone by the well. Nathaniel nodded. I am tired of watching people die, tired of living in fear. I must try something, even if it kills me. Hattie studied him, seeing the result and the anger simmering for years. Finally, she spoke. I can teach you. Not everything that would take years, but enough. Enough to perhaps win, if your enemy does not expect resistance over the following months. Had he taught Nathaniel in secret, under cover of darkness, in hidden locations, she showed him where to strike for maximum effect, the solar plexus. To wind an opponent, the liver for debilitating pain, the throat, the eyes, the knees. She taught him leverage how a smaller person could throw a larger one. How to redirect force, rather. Then meet it head-on, she instructed him in footwork, evading strikes, and creating angles. Ancient wisdom, passed through generations, was now being weaponized for a single, desperate purpose. Yet, now, edge was not enough. Nathaniel needed an opportunity. He needed Silas to select him for the circle. Silas only chose the visibly weak and failing. Therefore, Nathaniel had to feign weakness. He had to convince everyone, including Silas, that he was deteriorating, becoming a liability worthy of being called out. Nathaniel began his performance. He moved slower in the fields, dropped his cotton sack as if his grip were failing, stumbled without cause, and developed a persistent cough. He started subtly, but the act was consistent, intensifying week by week. He deliberately low, same weight, eating less to appear gaunt, hollowing his cheeks and slumping his shoulders to seem smaller. He made every movement look laborious. The overseers noticed. Marcus Kane, the head overseer, reported to Silas that Nathaniel was declining rapidly, possibly from consumption or simply being worn out, and was hindering his work crew. Silas came to observe, saw the stumbling and coughing, and concluded Nathaniel was expended. Ready for disposal, he began planning his next demonstration. However, one person saw through Nathaniel's ruse. Hattie knew, of course, as she Washington, as his co-conspirator, but there was also a young woman named Hope. She was beautiful despite her hardships, and she loved Nathaniel. They had been together for years, though marriage was forbidden. They were committed to each other. Hope knew Nathaniel's true strength and intelligence, and she realized what he was doing. She confronted him one night in his cabin. URP. Planning something, you want to be called to the circle. You plan to fight Silas. Nathaniel did not deny it. He could not lie to her. I must add, I cannot just grow old and die in that circle, L. Like the others, tears welled in Hope's eyes. You will die regardless. Even if you win, they will kill you afterward. You know there is no escape from this. Nathaniel took her hands. Pay. Raps, probably, but I would rather die fighting than die begging. I would rather die trying to injure him than die for his amusement. And maybe ... maybe I will not die. Perhaps there is a way to survive, to escape, to be free. Hope wanted to believe him, to cling to hope, but she had watched 22 men die and had no reason to think Nathaniel would be different. If you do this, she said, if you go through with it, I will lose you. One way or another, you will be gone. Then come with me, Nathaniel implored. If I somehow survive and escape, come with me. We will find freedom together. Hope pulled away. That is a dream, a fantasy. No one escapes Mississippi. The slave catchers always find you. And even if you reach the north, I am a woman. I could not run as you can. I would slow you down, ensuring we are both caught. She was crying now. I love you, but I cannot watch you die in that circle. When they call you, I will look away. I cannot bear to see it. Nathaniel understood. It was too much to ask, and he went to witness. He held her as she cried, memorizing her presence, knowing this might be their final night, that his plan would lead either to freedom or death, and that either way, his current life was ending. After she left, Nathaniel lay awake, contemplating abandonment of his plan, choosing mere survival, but he could not. He was too committed. He had to see it through. The summons came on a humid Monday morning. The air was thick even at dawn. The field workers assembled for their daily assignments. The overseers were organizing crews when Silas emerged from the main house. dressed in a white linen shirt and dark trousers, moving with the unshakable confidence of a man who had never lost, who had killed. 22 times, Marcus King rang the bell 3. Sharp strikes, the signal to halt all work, the signal that death was imminent. All labor ceased. Hundreds of enslaved people assembled, knowing the ritual, the marked circle in the dirt, the one-sided fight, the inevitable outcome. Some looked resigned, others terrified, all trapped. Silas surveyed the crowd, allowing the tension and fear to build, savoring his power. Finally, he spoke. "We have dead weight on this plantation. People who consume resources without providing value." His eyes found Nathaniel. Nathaniel, step back. Forward, the crowd parted. Nathaniel walked. Through, head bowed, shoulders slumped, the picture of exhaustion and defeat. He stopped several paces from Silas, avoiding eye contact, playing his part perfectly. "You have been declining," Silas declared, growing weak, becoming useless. "I have watched you stumble and cough, pretending you can barely work. We will settle this in the usual manner, you and I, here and now. The rules stand. You win, you are free. You lose ... double quotes." He smiled his terrible smile. "Well, you will no longer be tired." The white overseers laughed, forming a loose circle, armed with whips and clubs, confident in the predetermined outcome. Then something shifted. Nathaniel raised his head and looked directly into Silas's eyes, a knowing, confident smile on his lips. "I accept your challenge, overseer, let us see what happens." The way he said overseer was wrong, laced with mockery and disrespect. Silas felt a fleet, curved out, but he had witnesses and could not back down. Without appearing weak, "Marcus, mark the circle," he ordered. Marcus scratched a circle in the dirt. 22 men had died within its bounds. A 23rd was expected. Silas removed his shirt, revealing a powerful, muscular physique. Murmurs of fear rippled through the crowd. How could anyone challenge that? Then Nathaniel removed his shirt, and everything changed. His body was not wasted. It was lean, defined, and strong, covered in the scars of his bondage, but radiating actual power, not the feigned weakness of the past months. Hope gasped. Hattie gave a slight nod. A few elder enslaved people smiled grimly. The deception was revealed. Silas stared, rage boiling within him. "You have been deceiving me, pretending. Weakness, making a fool of me." Nathaniel shrugged. "You chose to believe what you saw. You decided I was dying. That fault is your own." The insolence was shocking. Enslaved people did not speak this way. Silas's hands clenched. "I will kill you slowly. You will regret every lie, every moment you thought yourself clever." "Perhaps," Nathaniel said, "or perhaps Tadeo, you learn you are not invincible, that you can be beaten, that you can die." He rolled his shoulders, loosened his neck, and moved with the grace of a trained fighter. Silas's doubt warred with his few. This man needed to be destroyed, made an example of, killed mercilessly. Marcus dropped his hand. The fight began. Silas charged immediately, his standard tactic of overwhelming aggression, but Nathaniel did not retreat. He sidestepped at the last moment, letting Silas's momentum carry him past, and drove his elbow hard into Silas's ribs. The impact cracked bone. Silas gasped, pain erupting. In his chest, he had never been truly hurt in these fights. The shock was profound. He turned to face Nathaniel, who was smiling again. "That was for Joseph," Nathaniel said quietly. "The first maw, and you murdered." Silas roared and charged again. Swinging a massive fist, Nathaniel ducked beneath it, moved inside Silas's guard, and delivered 3 rapid, precise punches to the torso, solar plexus, liver, kidney. Hattie's teachings: strike the soft targets, inflict maximum pain, disable the opponent. Silas staggered, each blow landing perfectly. His breath came in gasps. His ribs screamed. Nauseating pain spread from his liver, and his back spasmed. He was seriously injured, and the fight had just started. The crowd watched in stunned silence. This defied the script. The overseer was supposed to win easily, but Nathaniel was dominant, making Silas appear slow and clumsy. The implications were seismic. If the overseer could be beaten, perhaps he was not all-powerful. Perhaps the system was vulnerable. Perhaps resistance was possible. Silas tried to grapple, to use his weight. He charged, got his arms around Nathaniel, and lifted him, attempting a throw, but Nathaniel twisted, applying the leverage. Hattie had taught him, using Silas's own strength against him, and reversed the throw. Silas was hurled through the air, hitting the ground hard. The wind knocked from his lungs. Before he could recover, Nathaniel was on him, mounting his chest, his fists raining down blows on Silas's face, throat, and temples. Each strike was calculated, designed for maximum damage. Silas tried to protect his head, but the assault was relentless. His nose shattered, blood poured, his lips split, teeth broke, and his eyes swelled shut. The beating was systematic, a channel for years of pent-up fury. Marcus King moved to intervene. The overseer was losing badly. This could not continue. But Hattie stepped directly into his path. The overseer declared it a fair fight. She stated loudly. He said the rules were clear. Win and earn freedom, lose and die. Those were his words. You interfere now. You prove his word is worthless. You prove he cannot win his own battles. Marcus hesitated. She was right. Silas had created this public spectacle. If the overseers interfered, it would undermine the entire structure of terror, Revia, laying the master's promises as lies and his power as dependent on their help. The other overseers looked on, uncertain. In the circle, the beating continued. Nathaniel's fist hammered down. Silas was barely conscious, his face a bloody, broken mess. He feebly tried to push Nathaniel off, but he had no strength left. He was being beaten to death before the very people he had to, or IZD. Finally, Nathaniel stopped. He stood, looking down at the broken man bleeding in the dirt. You said I would win my freedom, he announced, his voice carrying to everyone. U.S. Those were the rules. You lose, I go free. That was your promise. He scanned the crowd, ensuring every witness understood. I won by your own rules. I am free. For a moment, the was absolute stillness. The enslaved were in shock. The whites were paralyzed by disbelief. Then Marcus found his voice. You are a dead man. You know that. Even if you won this fight, you will not leave here alive. We will hunt you. We will kill you slowly, painfully. We will make an example that lasts for days. Nathaniel nodded. Probably, but for now, for these moments, I am free. I beat him. I won, and I want everyone here to remember this. Remember, he is just a man. He bleeds. He can be beaten. Remember, you do not have to accept this. Resistance is possible. He yelled, looked directly at his people. Remember me. Remember what happened here. And when your moment comes, when you get your chance, be ready. Be brave. Fight back. Then more whites arrived. Neighboring planters, guests from the main house, additional overseers. They came running, armed with guns, whips, and clubs, intent on crushing this insurrection. 20 men surrounded Nathaniel. The odds were impossible, but Hattie had planned for this. She had spent weeks preparing, recruiting allies, devising contingencies. As the whites closed in, she shouted a single word in her native tongue. You, a word they did not understand. Abue. Now. The plantation erupted into coordinated chaos. Dozens of enslaved people moved at once, not attacking, but creating pandemonium, running in all directions. NS, screaming, dropping tools, generating overwhelming noise and confusion. The whites couldn't focus, couldn't fire without hitting each other or damaging property. They were momentary. Lee paralyzed. In that chaos, Nathaniel ran. He sprinted for the tree line, for the woods, for the slimmest chance of escape. Gunshots cracked, bullets whizzed past. One struck him in the left shoulder, spinning him around and dropping him too. One knee, agony seared through him, but he forced himself up and kept running, vanishing into the forest. Behind him, the plantation descended in. To Bedlam, whites shouted, dogs barked. The hunt began, but the confusion had bought him precious time. By the time organized pursuit was mounted, Nathaniel had a significant head start, and he was prepared. He had planned his escape for weeks, marking routes, hiding supplies, creating false trails. The shoulder wound was severe, but not immediately fatal. The bullet had passed through muscle, it bled heavily, and would likely infect, but it wouldn't stop him yet. He ran for an hour, put distance behind him, then stopped at a hidden cache for bandages, a knife, food, and water. He bound his wound and moved on. The following days were a haze of pain and resolve. Nathaniel traveled by night, hid by day, followed streams to confuse tracking dogs, and avoided all roads. His wound festered, fever set in, his body shook with chills, but he pressed on, northward, always northward, guided by the North Star toward freedom. Meanwhile, the Blackwood estate was in upheaval. Silas survived, but just barely. He was bedridden. For weeks, a doctor said he would live, but would never be the same, permanently disfigured, blind in one eye, and plagued by chronic pain. Greater damage was psychological. His invincibility was shattered. His authority, built on terror, was broken. He was just a man who had been publicly defeated and humiliated. Other planters were aghast, not at his cruelty, but at his failure. He had shown weakness, creating a dangerous precedent. The story spread like wildfire. Every enslaved person in the region soon knew that Nathaniel had an overseer Blackwood. It ignited hope and the belief that resistance was possible. The planters tried to suppress the tale, claiming cheating or illness, but the truth, witnessed by hundreds, could not be erased. Silas sent professional slave catchers after Nathaniel, offering a large bounty. They tracked him for weeks, finding traces of blood on leaves, footprints, camp signs, but they never caught him. He had help. The Underground Railroad, the secret network aiding fugitives, had been watching Blackwood. Hearing of Nathaniel's fight and escape, they mobilized. They found him in Tennessee, near death from infection and fever. They hid him, treated his wound, nursed him back to health, and moved him along the network from safe house to safe house, across dangerous borders. Eventually, Nathaniel crossed into free soil, collapsing in the home of an abolitionist family. They cared for him through a long, delirious fever. Slowly, he recovered. His shoulder healed. His strength returned. For the first time in his life, he was a free man, no longer property. A human being with rights, but freedom was bittersweet. He had left behind everyone he loved. Hope had, i.e., the dozens who had created the diversion for his escape. He later learned Hattie had been whipped nearly to death as punishment. Others had been sold further south. Hope had been sold to an Alabama plantation. His freedom was purchased with their suffering. The guilt was crushing. He tried to return for them, contacting abolitionists to plan a raid, but was dissuaded. It was too dangerous, too likely to fail and get everyone killed. He was told his best service was to live, to build a life, to be a symbol that escape was possible. When the Civil War began, Nathaniel immediately enlisted in one of the first colored infantry regiments. He fought in several battles, survived, was promoted to sergeant, and led men in combat. He killed Confederate soldiers without remorse, seeing each as a representative of the system that had enslaved him. When the war ended, he returned to Mississippi with Union forces. The Blackwood estate was burned and abandoned. Silas had fled. The land, promised to freed slaves, was instead sold to northern investors. Nathaniel found Hattie, now elderly and free, destitute. He brought her north, ensured her care, and visited her often. She lived a few more years. Her final words to him were, "You made it count. You made my sacrifice meaningful. Thank you." He searched for hope, tracing her to a plantation in Alabama, only to discover she had died of cholera before the war's end, never knowing slavery had ended or that he had survived. The loss devastated him. He had dreamed of their reunion. Nathaniel eventually settled in the North, married a woman named Clara, a former slave who understood his pain and nightmares. They built a life, had children, bought land, and raised their family in freedom, educating them and providing opportunities he never had, but he never forgot the fight or the people who helped him. He told his story to his children, grandchildren, and anyone who would listen, ensuring its preservation. The story of the day enslaved men defeated his overseer. Nathaniel lived to an old age, surrounded by free, educated descendants. His funeral was attended by many black, and white fellow veterans, abolitionists, family, and friends. His headstone read, "Nathaniel Freeman. Born into bondage, died in freedom, he fought back." His story became legend within black communities, a testament to the fact that oppressors could be beaten. It was embellished over time. Some said he killed Silas, freed all the slaves, possessed superhuman strength, but the core truth remained. White historians often dismissed it as myth, but evidence persisted in court records, census data, and newspaper mentions. The truth was there for those who sought it. Decades later, a historical marker was placed where the Blackwood estate once stood. It acknowledges the site and briefly tells Nathaniel's story, noting his courage inspired others to resist. It is a small gesture, an incomplete account, but it is acknowledgement over silence. The marker receives visitors, descendants, students, those paying respect to a man who defied his fate, who fought back, and who won. What is your perspective on Nathaniel's story? Was his use of violence justified? Should he have chosen flight over fight? Should Hattie and the others have assisted him, knowing the potential repercussions? Should he bear the guilt for the suffering his escape caused? These questions lack simple answers. Violence in opposition to oppression is morally complex, aiding an escape that invites us. Ever punishment requires immense courage. Survival while others suffer creates a burden of guilt. What remains undeniable is that Nathaniel refused to accept his bondage. He chose to fight, valuing freedom over safety, and through intelligence, preparation, and bravery achieved the seemingly impossible. His story matters because it refutes the myth of the passive slave acquiescence to their fate. It proves resistance was constant, that the enslaved were strategic, courageous, and formidable when opportunity arose. The institution of slavery required immense violence to sustain precisely because the enslaved never ceased their defiance. If you found this story impactful, subscribe to the channel. Share it to illustrate that resistance is always possible, that courage is significant, that ordinary people can achieve extraordinary feats, that oppressive systems are not permanent, and that the perceived weak are not always weak, nor the strong always strong. Remember, history is filled with moments when individuals refused to accept injustice, when they stood against overwhelming odds, when they fought back and prevailed. May you embody that spirit when your moment arrives.